obviously I'm not Jesse Lee Peterson, and he has a lot of experience, and he's been up here doing this for a long time, and he's traveled around and spoke. He's seen a lot of things. So there is a wisdom that comes from him that people want to hear from and also see. But there's also a spirit that's within all of us and within me that he's entrusted me to be able to speak the word. So I hope that we can fellowship today. We'll see what happens. If the Lord is willing, maybe we argue. I'm okay with that too. All in the name of Jesus, right? So we'll see what happens. But yeah, thanks again to Jesse Lee Peterson for allowing me to fill in for him. And he's probably watching, so you. But he'll be back next week if the Lord is willing. So you got to deal with me at least for an hour today, okay? It's interesting because there's a few things that I wanted to, first I want to kind of share my story of how I even came to Bond briefly. Because it's interesting to be up here. Because when I first seen Jesse, it was, I don't remember when, probably 2017 maybe. And I went to my uncle's house for a Bible study. And my uncle's the one who like showed me Jesse, right? And I went to his house for a Bible study, and I go to his house and we like sitting on the couch and we're like talking before it comes on, and then Jesse comes on. And mind you, I've never heard anybody speak. I'm sure many people relate. I never heard anybody speak like him. And my reaction immediately wasn't like overreaction, like, you know, this guy's so crazy, he's a weirdo. It wasn't that, but I was thinking that. Like, there's something wrong with him. Like, this can't be. But I watched the whole thing because I trusted my uncle who showed me, and he's been a follower of Jesse forever long before then. And I'm watching the thing, and it's making sense, but it's not really like clicking until the last 5 minutes where he talks about anger, getting rid of anger. And at the last 5 minutes, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, it caught me just in that 5 minutes. I think the church was like an hour, hour and a half. And after I just talked to my uncle about it and all that stuff, but from there, I just developed this like interest, right? I'm like, what is this about? Because I knew I always had anger, but I never knew that it was like bad or not. I never knew it was like destructive to my life. I just thought that that's just what you have type of thing. But I knew that when I would react for my anger, there would be problems, right? But I never knew you can actually overcome it. So moving forward, I think that night I left the Bible study and I was like digging into Jesse's videos. Who else has done that? Yeah. Just dig into a bunch of videos. Because it's so, right? It's so crazy that you are like, either I'm crazy too or he's on to something, right? That was my thought. So I'm like, let me watch a bunch of videos, and I'm watching videos, and as I'm watching, I'm like feeling the spirit a little bit, but I'm like, but still this is kind of weird. With this Satan, right? With this is wrong. So I'm digging and digging, but the things that he's saying is so like different, like overcome emotions, anger is bad, forgive your mom, your mother and your father is the one who screwed you up. All these things, which are so true, that I've learned to come that are so true, were like things that just was like, it seemed like almost untrue, because it's never been taught to where I grew up, especially me as a millennial. I've never heard this. We're taught to be comfortable, don't offend people, don't all these things. So I just watched like 100 videos, and I keep digging and digging. Mind you, at the time I have no car. I don't have a car at the time. Beta. No car, and still living at home, and I'm 25 at the time, so beta again. 25 at home, no car, and I'm watching 100 videos, but at this point I'm like, okay, look, if I'm gonna find out if this guy is real and not an alien, I gotta go to the church service, right? I gotta show up. So he is having like a men's meeting, right? He has a men's meeting on the first Thursday of every month, right? So I'm like, I gotta go to that thing. But at the time, I don't even know how I remember this, but at the time I was babysitting my niece, and my sister was coming home a little late, and I'm like, man, I might not make it, I might have to skip it. And I had no car, so I'm like, it was an easy excuse if I wanted to, just to be like, oh, my sister's not gonna be here, I'm late, she's late, I don't have a car, I don't have to go. But something in me told me just go anyway. So my sister came, I rode my bike to the train. Mind you, I was living in like Pasadena area, Glendora, so I had to take the train to get here. So I took my bike to the train. I took 2 trains to get to this place, rode my bike from the train station to here, and I pull up in here and I'm late, right? So I already started a reputation. He black. You guys heard of he black? The reputation already started. So I walked in, and I remember sitting like right where Alexa's sitting. I was right there. And I'm late, so right when I come in, everybody's looking at me. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. So I wait there, and then a guy's up here talking. And for something in me, I was like, man, Jesse's gonna call me. He's gonna call me up. I just know he's gonna call me up. 5 minutes later, he's like, you, what's your name? And I said, Joel. He's like, come up here and talk. And I was like, oh my God, I don't wanna do this. I got up there shaking, and he just was, I don't even know how it started. I don't know if he asked me a question or what happened, but I just started like talking about my life, what I've been going through, how I always had anger, and I always wanted to, I grew up with my mom. My dad was around, but not in the household. So my mom mainly raised me, and she was the really, like, don't mess with her when she's not your children, but as your children, she was just too nice, really nice, right? And I don't blame her for it. I don't hold it against her. That's just how she was. But she was very nice, and she almost like wanted to make up for the fact that my father wasn't there. So she thought she should give extra love, right? So I always felt that love and that comfort. But I also had a lot of anger and resentment because I didn't have that discipline in the home. You know, I didn't have that discipline, and I felt like I needed it, but I wasn't getting it from my mom, right? So I used to get really mad, and I would like be ready to just go off like when she would say something. But I would stop myself from going off on her because I'm like, that's my mom. I can't be mean to my mom. I can't say that to my mom. That's disrespectful, right? But I would have it just baking in here, right? So I would just push it down. And then when I came here, I was just talking to, just talking to the men and just talking about how, I had this anger and I'm really trying to get over it, but I just don't know what to do and blah, blah, blah. And then somehow I understood that it's good to speak up, right? I understood that you can overcome anger if you let go or understand that you're wrong for resenting somebody who is also, broken and going through things like you were, the things that you've done, they're dealing with it. And it like sparked something in me. So I was just going in and explaining everything. And I think it was after that was a Thursday. And I left home just feeling better, like on my bike, just riding, just feeling good, right? Riding home, taking the train, but I felt better. I felt like a lightness. And I was so excited that finally I met people who think the way I think, because I always thought this way, but I never could really express myself growing up because I thought I was the crazy one. I was like, there's no way what I'm feeling is true. Meanwhile, all my friends and people around me are doing crazy stuff, and I'm doing it too because I'm thinking like, this is what I have to do to fit in, right? This is the right way to live. I'm crazy, so let me try to fit into the world. When I came here, Jesse helped me realize, no, like that's not the way to go. The way you think is the way most people are afraid to think, or they don't think. So you're blessed to have those thoughts. You're blessed to believe what you believe. So he brought that out of me, but I was excited riding home. I was like, wow, this is cool to release this. And the next day, I knew Jesse had a radio show. The next day, I turned on the radio show, and then Jesse's talking about the conversation about me in the church service. To me, when he said it, because I never seen the radio show, and I just knew Jesse was popular on YouTube, I was excited. I'm like, I made it. I made it, right? I was excited. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And I showed my mom, and she was just like, oh, cool, right? She didn't really think anything about it, because she doesn't know the podcast. She don't know the internet. She don't know anything, right? But so I went to, the men's meeting. And then at this point, I'm like, okay, now I went there. I believe it's true. And I know that these guys aren't a part of a cult. And they're not going to turn around and kill me, right? Or like, this is a trap. These are all the thoughts that I'm seriously thinking. Like, is he this alien that's going to abduct me and I'm going to not come home, right? Wasn't that. So I'm pumped and church comes around. That Sunday, I come to church. Mind you, I'm living at home, no car. Come to church. First day at church, Jesse calls on me. I don't know when it was, at the beginning, mid, I don't remember. But he was like, do you still live at home? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, and I was like, I don't have a car, I took a bike here, the whole thing. So he like grills me on like, you need to leave. And then in my head, I go back to those thoughts like, no, this man is crazy. Look, this is what I was thinking, it's crazy. Why would I need to leave? I need to save up. I need to get my stuff together, and then I'll leave, right? Mind you, I'm 25 years old, right? Old. Not old, but old enough, right? So, then he's like, you gotta leave. And then the whole time I'm thinking like, there's no way I could leave. How am I gonna leave? Like, where am I gonna go? How is this gonna happen? I don't even have a job. I was teaching 2 days a week. I teach dance classes still, but before I didn't have my own dance program, but then I was teaching at a studio 2 days a week, which is like an hour each, making like no money, right? But enough to get by because I don't have rent. I don't have utilities. I don't have a car. So I'm living life still, right? And then he's like, you gotta go. And afterwards, at the end of church, I asked him again, I was like, are you sure? You sure I should leave? He's like, you gotta go. And on my way home, I was thinking about it. I was like, it just dawned on me. I was like, I gotta move out. For the next week or so, I called Jesse, like when I had certain issues that I was dealing with trying to make sense of things, I would call Jesse, like, hey Jesse, what do you think about this? And he would talk to me. He would answer the phone and he would just talk to me. And I was like, I gotta go, and I told him I gotta go. That next week, he offered me a job as an audio engineer on the radio show. And then I think it was that next Monday, so probably that next week, I started on the radio show. 2 weeks later, I moved out. And then another 2 weeks after that, I got a car. And I've been on my own ever since. So it's just crazy how one day, and deep down, I always knew that I didn't want to be home. I always knew that I didn't want to live with my mom forever, right? I knew that my life wasn't going to start unless I did something, but I just couldn't do it. But everything changed when I just understood that. And then when I forgave my parents, things changed for me as well. So fast forward, because I want to wrap, I don't want to hang too long on it, but fast forward, when I was the audio engineer, for about 4 years, about close to 4 years. And at this point, I'm just like happy to be a part of a different environment, right? And I'm in there, I'm enjoying it, I'm learning this new thing as an audio engineer, and I'm learning a lot. I'm working here during the week, and then I'm coming to churches on Sundays. Like, I'm seeing Jesse way more than I want to, right? But I'm just happy, I'm like, and there comes a point to where, at this point, I'm getting fed so much wisdom, and now I'm like, I'm so grateful that I start to really look at Jesse as like a superhero to me, right? Unconsciously, because at the time, if I would have said he's a superhero, I would have felt crazy for saying that. But in my mind, that's how I felt. Like, he felt like, well, I've never seen this. This guy's very slow to be upset. He's patient with people. He's honest, he's direct. I'm like, this is insane. All the things that I never was taught without having my dad in the home to teach me, right? So I didn't have that like courage. So I admired that courage. So I wanted that courage, right? And as I'm learning, I'm like picking things up. I'm picking that up, picking that up, picking that up. And this guy is like unbeatable in my eyes. So as I'm moving forward, I'm super excited. I go out into the world. And tell me if you guys relate to this. I go out into the world, right? Into my normal day life with all this excitement of all this new things I learned, feeling good, feeling freer, right? And I'm telling everybody about the word. I'm telling, but not the Bible, but Jesse's word that I learned, right? I'm telling everybody about it. I'm like, you need to forgive your mother. You need to talk to your daddy. You need to go do all these things, right? And I'm like, do you have anger? Oh, you need to forgive, right? Anger is evil. You're a woman. You know, all these things, right? Telling them all these things, cracking the jokes, doing the whole thing. And it felt good for me for a second because I'm like, I know the truth and you need to get it together, right? Meanwhile, I still don't have it together. I just have these learned things that I learned, right? I still don't have it together. Like, this is a month, right? 2 months, right? So I go and I'm telling everybody this. Now, over the years, so months passed, years passed, I'm like still like on it, right? Because I'm here so much, right? And I'm still on it, talking to people. But the greatest thing happened to me that changed everything for me and the whole direction of like how I got into, you know, where I am as far as what I believe, the more freer I feel is as I was around Jesse so much, as I was doing the radio show, as I was doing church, 24/7, just always being around, I realized something that was so insane to me was that that Jesse was a human being too, right? Jesse's a human being, and being around somebody a lot, you see a lot, right? And I was able to see him make mistakes. Now, before the chat goes crazy, I ain't talking about crazy stuff, okay? Normal people stuff, okay? And I would see like little mistakes and places where I would disagree with Jesse. But in my head, he's my superhero, right? He's a superhero. So I'm thinking like, I'm probably wrong, he's probably right, right? And I would just let it go, like, maybe I'm not seeing it right, right? And then we would have like these debates, and I would go back and forth with what I believe, he would go back and forth with what he believed, right? And I'm like, he's an older guy, he's been around, long enough, he has experience, he's wise, he probably knows it and I don't. And I would just push it down, right? And as I'm out in the world too, I'm realizing like everything I'm saying is Jesse's language. It's Jesse's words, right? Yes, he's saying the truth from God, right? But in Jesse's way, right? He's speaking in Jesse's way. And I was speaking the truth from God, Jesse's way. You know what I mean? So when it's coming from me, it's disingenuous. So people are kind of like, I get what you're saying, but you're too much. And to me, I'm thinking like, no, you're just not seeing the truth. You're not ready to hear it, right? But I turned so many people away in my life because I was just so excited, right? And but people didn't understand it was just because I've been waiting for this. So when it came, I just flew with it, right? But I was here and not grounded here. So I was just all up in the air, floating with the clouds, just thinking that I'm preaching the gospel, right? But sounding crazy, looking crazy to the rest of the world. And then as I'm going forward, I just started to see more and more that things that I disagree with. And it got to a point to where like, I was like, you know what? I have to just stick to my guns. I have to, because I feel like I wasn't growing. I wasn't growing not because what Jesse was talking about wasn't true, but because I wasn't thinking for myself. I was just adopting what I believed somebody could never be wrong about. I had him on a pedestal, right? It was a pedestal. But the pedestal gave way when I realized, you know what? And it just dawned on me. It wasn't like something I told myself, I'm going to start doing this. It just dawned on me that I got to trust my gut. I got to trust the inner source that's in Jesse, that's in you, that's in me. I got to start trusting that and leaning on that and let my word be my word, even if I'm wrong, right? And I started to do that. And I started to just stand on my word. I started to just trust myself, trust my gut, trust like the inner voice within. But I had to learn to start recognizing it, right? Because it's easy to just adopt what somebody says. Because when they say it, it makes sense, but you get it intellectually, right? You don't really get it into the spirit yet, right? So I was just adopting these things. But when I started following my gut and trusting the source within me, I started to have my own opinions. I started to think for myself. And there was things that I continued to disagree with. But I knew that if because, let me tell you why, I'll tell you why really quick. The reason why I really started to trust it too is because I would realize when I would do the things in my life, they weren't working. So I'm like, if this is not working, this can't be right for me, right? So I'm like, you know what, I gotta do is work. So I would start trying to do things that worked. I would start trying to lead in my own understanding. Things start making sense for me. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Oh, okay, then I disagree with that. I disagree with that. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. This is the whole thing, is that a lot of people think that it's bad to disagree. Like, if I disagree with Jesse, then either he's a fraud or I'm a fraud. Why does it have to be? But that's a thought that Satan puts in your mind, right? But it's like, people disagree. And sometimes Jesse is going to be wrong. Sometimes I'm going to be wrong. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. But if we look at people in that way, we can trust our own source, but also still get along. Because, not to make a long story, oh, it's a long story already. But at the end of the day, it's also unfortunate for Jesse too, because people, when somebody puts you on a pedestal and then you make a mistake, you're judged, right? You're looked down upon like, you're not a real pastor. You're not this. A pastor wouldn't say this. A pastor wouldn't say, you know what I mean? Like, you're judged, but it's not Jesse's fault, it's you. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? You put Jesse on the pedestal. You're the one that have this opinion. Now, if he says something wrong, you're like, he's not real. And if he says something right, he's real. Then you're controlled at all times. Everybody's controlling you based off of your intellectual knowledge, right? So when that dawned for me and when it made sense for me, that's when I left the radio show. And it wasn't no beef. It wasn't nothing like that. It was just that I had my beliefs, and it was time for me to move on because I seen that I need to get out into the world and grow. I gotta go grow. I gotta go put this into work, right? I had to take what I've learned, but also experience the world for myself and go through the things I need to go through to really start recognizing the voice within, right? And being led by that. So I did that, and life's just been changing for me because, for one, God has always been with me. But also, the world on the other side of being awake is different. It's very different. And the more you wake up, the more you start to unrecognize like the things that the world, then you start to see like, dang, I used to be doing that, right? I used to be doing that. And then you see that people can't see. And then you also see that you can't be preaching to everybody. And you also see that not everybody is, they're in a position to where they don't take things personal. Even if you've grown and you don't take them as personal as much, you have to understand they may take it personal. So you got to show them respect. You know what I mean? You learn these things as you're like dealing with the world. And it says in the Bible, you got to be in the world. What is it? You got to be in the world, but not of it, right? But you got to learn how to walk the streets and learn how to serve people at where they are. And sometimes serving them is speaking up, right? It is being honest. It is being real and straightforward and direct. But But also there's a time to shut up, right? And keep your mouth shut and be quiet and just be there. Just be present, right? And just be small talk. And just be whatever is needed in that moment, right? It's necessary because the world also needs that too. So I had to learn that, and I learned that just by being out in the world. And learning how to deal with people. And I'm still learning, and it's still been a process. But I say all that to say, thinking for yourself is probably the greatest thing I've learned about this whole process is thinking for myself, trusting God within. And that's when you actually, the relationship with God grows, and you really start to understand who God is. Because you see that it's Him in you that's helping you see all these things. And it helps you to understand other people. And you understand it's not you running the ship, right? It's not you making the decisions. It's not you that has these opinions. It's the lie. It's Satan, right? So I wanted to ask, because I kind of want to still keep it in like Jesse's style. I want to ask but I'm going to do it like random, like how he does it, to make people feel uncomfortable. Because I remember I felt so uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it. You, stand up here and tell me. No, I'm playing. You've been here before. I've seen you at the men's meeting, so I know. No, not him right here. I know in the front, yeah. You've been here. Yeah, you've been at the men's meeting, so I've seen you before. Do you ever find yourself trusting somebody, in all honesty, trusting somebody's word, or do you trust your gut? Do you go within?